I came home early from work that Tuesday. The house was half empty. Boxes were stacked by the front door, toys missing from the living room, drawers ripped open, and standing in the middle of it all was my wife, Stephanie, calm, distant, like a stranger. "I'm moving out," she said. "The kids and I are leaving tonight." She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She handed me divorce papers like she was delivering a memo. Apparently, she was already living with her boss. The same man I helped her get a job with. The same man who bought her a mansion by the lake. She wanted full custody. Claimed my job made me unfit to be a father. 12 years, 2 children, hundreds of family dinners, soccer practices, bedtime stories. Gone in a single afternoon. But here's what she didn't expect. I wasn't the absent father she made me out to be. I had receipts, photos, journals, witnesses, and I wasn't about to let my children be raised by a lie. So I fought back. And what happened next changed everything. If you've ever been betrayed by the one person you trusted most, this story will hit hard. Stay until the end and let me know in the comments. What would you do if this happened to you? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more powerful real-life revenge stories. Only here on Revenge with Chris. My name is Jason Miller. I'm 40 years old, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. I've been a mechanical engineer since I was 26. But honestly, my real job, my real purpose, was being a father. That was always the plan. Even back when Stephanie and I first met in college, we talked for hours about the kind of life we wanted to build. Nothing fancy, just stable, safe, full of love. She wanted a big family. I wanted to be the kind of dad who showed up for every school play and little league game. We were aligned on everything, or so I thought. We got married right after graduation, bought a small fixer-upper outside the city. Stephanie worked part-time at a front desk, while I took on a full-time role at a local engineering firm. When she said she wanted to grow in her career, I supported her 100%. I even pulled strings to get her an interview at a well-known law firm downtown. That's where she met Richard, the man who would later ruin everything. At the time, though, I didn't see any red flags. She got the job, and I was genuinely proud. We had Ethan 2 years later, then Lily not long after that. I stayed in my position despite multiple offers to relocate for promotion. Every time my boss brought it up, I'd say the same thing. "My wife has a good job here. The kids are settled. I'm not moving them." I thought I was being a good husband, a good man, and for a while it felt like we were on the same team. I was the guy who packed school lunches at 6 a.m., who kept track of dentist appointments and soccer schedules, who knew which stuffed animal Lily had to sleep with, or she'd cry all night. I didn't complain. I loved it. Meanwhile, Stephanie's career began to take off. She started coming home later. There were conferences, dinners with clients. I handled bedtime solo more and more. But again, I told myself this was what marriage was. Give and take. Still, I can't lie. Something in her changed. She stopped smiling when she walked through the door, stopped asking how my day was. Everything felt cold, mechanical. One night, I suggested a weekend trip with the kids, just to reconnect. She rolled her eyes. "Jason, I can't just drop everything for some random vacation. You think life works like that?" That stung, because for years I had dropped everything, for her, for our family. I swallowed my hurt and said nothing. Then came the little things. A second phone charger in her purse. A bottle of wine missing from the cabinet. Whispered calls behind closed doors. I noticed them, but I didn't want to believe them. I told myself, "You're just being paranoid. She's tired. Work is stressful." I gave her every benefit of the doubt, even when doubt was screaming in my face. But the real gut punch came one Sunday morning. We were sitting at the kitchen table when Ethan casually mentioned something about Mommy's new house by the lake. Stephanie froze. I looked at her, confused. She said it was just a property her boss owned that they sometimes use for retreats. But I could see it, that flicker in her eyes. Guilt, panic. She changed the subject and left the room. But in that moment, I knew. Something was very wrong. I just didn't know how wrong. Not yet. After that morning at the kitchen table, I started noticing everything. Not just the late nights and the vague excuses, but the distance, the emotional dead space between us. Stephanie wasn't just tired or stressed, she was checked out, present in body, but absent in every other way. One evening, I came home with Ethan's soccer jersey freshly dry cleaned. We had a game the next morning, and he was so excited. But when I walked into the kitchen, Stephanie was already dressed for dinner. Heels, makeup, a low-cut dress I hadn't seen in months. "Client dinner," she said, grabbing her purse. "Another one?" I asked. "That's 3 this week." She glared at me. "That's what it takes to move up in a firm like mine, Jason. I'm sorry if you don't understand that. I do understand hard work. But when was the last time we had dinner together? With the kids?" She didn't answer. Just left. That night I couldn't sleep. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked our shared calendar on her iPad. There was an entry for board retreat, Lake Geneva, all weekend. Not a work day, not a conference, a weekend. And it wasn't the first one. I dug deeper. Travel charges on our joint credit card, Uber receipts from late nights. Even her gym membership had been canceled months ago. She just never told me. The next morning, I called my buddy Marcus, who worked in IT security. He helped me check the home Wi-Fi logs, and there it was. A second phone had been connecting to our network during weekdays, always when I was at work. It wasn't Ethan's. It wasn't Lily's. My stomach dropped, but I still hadn't confronted her. I didn't have proof of an affair, and I didn't want to start a war I couldn't finish. So I did what I'd always done. I focused on the kids. I packed lunches, drove to recitals, took photos, documented everything. Because deep down, I had a feeling this was going to get worse before it got better. And I was right. It was a Tuesday afternoon in mid-April. I left work early, just a half day, to surprise Ethan at his school play. I was so excited. He had a small part, but he'd practiced for weeks. Lily was going too, with Stephanie. I figured we'd all grab dinner afterward, like a normal family. But when I pulled into our driveway, I froze. There were 2 movers' trucks parked outside. Men were carrying boxes out of our house. My house. I rushed in. "What the hell is going on?" Stephanie was in the foyer, arms crossed, cold as ice. "I told you last week, we're leaving." "You what? You never—" "Stephanie, what are you doing?" She handed me an envelope. Divorce papers. Full custody request. Claims that I was emotionally unavailable, too absorbed in work, unstable for consistent parenting. I was speechless. She didn't cry. She didn't look angry. Just efficient. Like she'd practiced this. The kids were already in the car. Bags packed. No tearful goodbyes. No explanations. Just silence. I tried to talk to Ethan. He looked confused. Lily waved at me through the back window. I stood on the porch and watched them drive away like I was some random neighbor, not their father. I walked back inside, still holding the papers. She'd been planning this. For months. I opened her laptop. She'd forgotten to sign out. That's when I saw the emails. To Richard. Dozens of them. Plans, real estate links. A school enrollment form for Lily with Richard's home address listed as primary residence. My hands were shaking. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a full-on ambush. She hadn't just left me. She'd rewritten the story, cast herself as the victim, and tried to erase me from the picture. But what she didn't know, what she never counted on, was that I'd been documenting everything. Not because I expected a war, but because I loved my kids enough to never miss a moment. And now those moments might be the only thing that could save them. The house was silent after they left. Not just quiet, but hollow. Every sound echoed. Every step felt wrong. I walked through the living room and saw the empty shelf where Lily's bedtime books used to sit. Ethan's Lego sets were gone. Even the framed family photo by the stairs had been taken. She left my wedding ring, though, placed neatly on the kitchen counter, like a period at the end of a sentence. I sat on the floor for hours that night, didn't eat, didn't cry, just stared at the divorce papers in my hand, reading the same sentence over and over again. The respondent is unfit to parent due to an emotionally unavailable lifestyle and excessive work commitments. I wanted to scream, but what good would that do? She didn't just steal the kids. She rewrote my identity, turned me into the absentee father, the man who was never there. But I was there. Every scraped knee, every science fair, every parent-teacher conference, I was the one who showed up. The next morning I called in sick. First time in years. I didn't have a plan yet. I just knew I couldn't let this go. I started by printing everything. Photos of Ethan holding his soccer trophy, me standing beside him, selfies of Lily and me building her volcano project, copies of school forms I'd signed, emails from teachers, doctor appointment receipts with my signature, timestamps from parent portals. Then I grabbed something I hadn't thought about in months, my journal. It started as a tool, a way to stay organized when Stephanie got busy, but I had kept it going, every day, for nearly a year. Notes like, Feb 12, Ethan had fever, stayed home with me. Called Dr. Nelson, gave Tylenol every 4 hours. Mar 8, Lily's dance recital. Steph didn't make it. Lily cried after. We went for ice cream. I had hundreds of entries like that. Proof that I wasn't just a good dad, I was the parent holding this family together while she built her second life. I called my friend Brandon, a divorce attorney, told him everything. At first, he tried to stay neutral until I showed him the evidence. He blinked. Jason, this is gold. You've built a better custody case than most lawyers could in 6 months. But then he paused. If she's already filed for full custody and the kids are staying with her, we'll have to move fast. Really fast. That night, I did something I never imagined I'd have to do. I opened a private folder of video clips I'd saved over the years. Little things. Birthday parties, game nights, bedtime giggles. There was one video of Lily falling asleep on my chest, her little hand clutching my shirt like she never wanted to let go. I watched it 10 times in a row. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about clearing my name. This was about saving my children, from growing up with a version of the truth that was completely fabricated, from believing their father abandoned them. Stephanie had made her choice. She picked money. She picked Richard. She picked a curated version of life where image mattered more than love. But I was still here, still fighting. And if she wanted a legal war, then I'd fight it with everything I had. Not for revenge, not to punish her, but because Ethan and Lily deserved to know the truth. And someday when they were old enough to ask what happened, I wanted to be able to look them in the eye and say, I never gave up on you. Brandon didn't waste time. The next morning, we filed an emergency petition to challenge the custody request. We included a motion for temporary shared custody based on documented evidence that I had been the children's primary caregiver for over a year. The judge scheduled a preliminary hearing within 10 days. I had less than 2 weeks to prepare for the most important case of my life, so I treated it like a mission. Every hour I wasn't at work, I was building the case. I turned my living room into a war room. Files, charts, timelines, photo evidence, even character letters from Ethan and Lily's teachers, pediatrician, and our neighbor Ms. Carmichael, who had watched me walk Lily to the school bus every single morning. I tracked down a digital forensics expert, someone Brandon knew, who helped us verify that Stephanie and Richard had been exchanging inappropriate emails months before she filed for divorce. Romantic, personal. Some of them even discussed removing me cleanly from the picture. It was sickening, but it was also damning. Then came the hardest part, talking to the kids. The court appointed a child psychologist to conduct interviews with Ethan and Lily, standard in high-conflict custody battles. I wasn't allowed to coach them, couldn't even speak about the case around them. So I did the only thing I could. I kept being their dad. When it was my weekend to see them under temporary shared custody, I didn't ask questions. I didn't badmouth Stephanie. I just showed up. We played board games. I made their favorite breakfast. I tucked them in like I always had, and slowly I saw it, that light coming back into their eyes. Ethan asked if I was coming to his next game. Lily clung to my arm when it was time to go. One night she whispered, Daddy, can we come back home soon? I kissed her forehead. I'm working on it, sweetheart. Meanwhile, Stephanie's lawyer was trying to paint me as obsessive, controlling. They cited the journal I kept as paranoid behavior, but Brandon flipped it. This man wasn't spying, he told the judge. He was parenting. When the court date came, I wore the same suit I wore on our wedding day. Not out of sentiment, but symbolism, Because this too was a vow, not to Stephanie, but to my kids, that I'd never stop fighting for them. The courtroom was tense. Stephanie sat across from me, flanked by her high-powered attorney and Richard, who, despite not being a party in the case, showed up to support her. I could see the smugness in his eyes, the assumption that money and influence would win. He had no idea what was coming. We presented the timeline of events. We submitted journal entries and photos, medical appointments, school drop-offs, all cross-referenced with dates Stephanie had been absent. We called character witnesses, Ms. Carmichael, Ethan's coach, even Lily's dance instructor. All of them said the same thing. Jason's the one who always shows up. And then we dropped the emails. One in particular hit like a grenade. Richard had written, "Once the custody papers are in, he won't have any leverage. We'll be in the clear." Chirs, the judge's eyebrows lifted. Stephanie tried to claim it was taken out of context, but the damage was done. Even worse for her, our forensic expert testified that these messages had predated the divorce filing. Some even discussed housing, schooling, and removal of parental rights, well in advance. It became clear this wasn't a natural breakdown of a marriage. This was premeditated parental alienation. The final blow came when the court-appointed psychologist testified that both Ethan and Lily expressed strong emotional ties to me, especially Lily, who described me as her safe place. When the judge spoke, the room was still. "Mr. Miller," he said, "your documentation, character witnesses, and consistency as a parent demonstrate an overwhelming capacity for stable, nurturing care." He paused. "Primary custody will be awarded to the father. The mother will have alternating weekend visitation, subject to supervised review for the next 6 months." Stephanie gasped. Richard stood up, furious, but the bailiff motioned for him to sit back down. I didn't smile, not out of pride, but out of relief. Not for me, for Ethan, for Lily, for finally bringing the truth to light. Stephanie didn't say a word as the judge finished his ruling. She just stared straight ahead, lips pressed tight, jaw clenched, while her attorney shuffled papers in silence. Richard, who had strutted into that courtroom with all the smugness of a man who thought money could buy reality, leaned back in his chair, visibly deflated. I stood still, not victorious, just grounded, like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. Outside the courtroom, Ethan ran up to me first. "Dad, does this mean we get to come back home?" I dropped to one knee, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Yeah, buddy, you're coming home." Lily threw her arms around my neck so hard I nearly lost balance. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. But Stephanie, she didn't come over. She walked right past us without looking back. 3 days later, I got a text from her. "We need to talk." We met at a neutral drop-off location, a community center, where supervised visitations were to take place. She showed up late, alone, no makeup, no heels, just a wrinkled cardigan and eyes that had clearly lost sleep. "This isn't fair," she said, voice low and bitter. "You turned them against me." "No, Stephanie," I said calmly. "You did that all by yourself." She scoffed. "So what now? You get to play the perfect dad while I get supervised weekends like a criminal?" I didn't answer. There was no point. She wasn't looking for understanding. She was looking for someone to blame. The fallout came quickly after that. Richard broke things off with her less than 2 months after the custody hearing. I heard from a mutual friend that he'd already hired a new assistant, someone 10 years younger with no kids, no baggage, no drama. Just like that, her golden ticket vanished. With no child support coming in and her professional reputation stained by rumors of office misconduct, Stephanie had to sell her car and move back in with her sister. The lakefront dream? Gone. The lifestyle she traded our family for? Shattered. Meanwhile, my life didn't just stabilize, it grew. I didn't set out to become some kind of advocate, but when word spread about my case, how I kept records, how I won full custody, I started getting messages. Dozens of them, from other fathers. Other men who had felt voiceless, trapped, erased. So I started a support group, Fathers First. We met at the local YMCA every Saturday. At first it was 5 guys, then 15, then 50. We talked about parenting, mental health, custody battles, how to stay grounded when everything felt like it was falling apart. Soon the local paper did a story on us. Then a parenting blog picked it up. Before long, we were on the news. And that's how I met Claire. She was a pediatrician who had gone through her own messy divorce 2 years earlier. She'd watched the segment about Fathers First and reached out, not as a journalist, not as a doctor, but as a single mom who understood what resilience looked like. We met for coffee. Then again, then again. It was slow, thoughtful. No games, no illusions. The kids adored her. Her son, Max, became fast friends with Ethan. Lily started calling her Doctor Claire, which eventually softened into just Claire, then Mom Claire, when no one was looking. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Claire, me, the kids, I looked around and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not perfection, not fantasy. Just a quiet, steady peace. Stephanie still comes around for her supervised visits. The bitterness is still there, but it's quieter now. Quieter because she knows this was her doing. And me? I sleep easy now. Because when everything I built was torn apart, I rebuilt it with truth, patience, and love. It's strange how quiet strength often goes unnoticed until it's the only thing left standing. People ask me sometimes if I ever regret not fighting sooner, not snooping earlier, not confronting Stephanie the moment things felt off. But I don't live in regret, because I didn't win this by being reactive. I won by being consistent, by being a father, day in, day out, even when no one was watching. Especially then, Ethan and Lily are thriving now. Our home is smaller, simpler, but filled with laughter again. Homework nights, Taco Tuesdays, messy Saturday mornings. Nothing extraordinary, but everything that matters. Claire and I aren't rushing anything. We're taking it one step at a time, learning how to blend two lives without erasing what came before. She once told me, the best families aren't the ones that look perfect. They're the ones that show up. That stuck with me. As for Stephanie, I don't hate her. I'm not even angry anymore. I just feel sad because she had everything she once said she wanted, and somewhere along the way, she decided it wasn't enough. But that's her path to walk. Mine is with my kids, with a clear heart, an open door, and a legacy they'll never have to question, because now they know their dad didn't disappear. He stood up, he fought back, and he never stopped loving them, not for a second. What did you think of this story? If you were in Jason's shoes, how would you have handled it? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you support Jason, vote number 2. If you think Stephanie deserves another chance, vote number 7. Don't forget to subscribe to Revenge with Chris so you never miss a powerful new karma story every single day.